It's a little cloudy today. Actually, we're in rainy season, so we don't get to see all the colors of the sunrise, and we're past solstice. So we're into August here. So we're about a month and a half past the solstice. So right on the money of the solstice, of course, the sun will rise directly over the middle. That's how the place is designed. What we're walking up to across the moat here is just the outline fencing around the outside. Once we get on the inside, it's a whole plethora of other stuff. So one of the stories I heard from a local here was there was lots of war activity in and around here. There's actually Japanese tanks, believe it or not, hidden in the trees over there. So I guess the Japanese were here at one time, military, and somebody was trying to shoot those off. So you can see they were blasted off on the top. All right, here's our entranceway. Okay. All of this work is everywhere, like everywhere. And here we are into the main courtyard of Angkor Wat. We're still just in the courtyard. So we're about a third of the way across the courtyard here. Now, if I recall, I think they call these libraries or houses of records or something. And these first buildings that you see in here. I mean, you can get lost in these places. I was telling these guys that you could spend a day just looking around in a couple of these if you want to go in there. There's carvings, friezes everywhere. But in one day, it's pretty tough to see everything in here. You got to keep moving. So here's the Angkor Wat temple approach itself. Around the outside, and then we have an entranceway around it as well. So again, all the defacing that was done on all the carvings and statues. Beware of monkey attack. Yeah. Beware of monkey attack. Okay. We will. Constant restoration. So on the outside of Angkor Wat, there's this walkway all the way around the circumference of the main structure itself. And it's like the Hall of History. And on every wall, there's historical depictions of friezes that are all over the place. So you'll see, like, for example, constantly this reference to somebody in the top in the middle there, okay? Whoever that is. And then on one side, there's often what they call the gods, and then there's the demons. So the story is the gods and the demons, right? There's 52 demons, 52 gods on the walkways, that the gods and the demons work together to churn the milk of the universe. Is how it's translated. I think it's water, because the milk is like the liquid of life. They call it milk. But that's a translation. This place is built for water. It's on water. I'm assuming it's a water issue. That's just my take on it, okay? But you see these depictions are the so-called human-like gods. And then mixed in with them are the like bird people. So Garuda is like, has a bird face. You see him the third from the right, or pardon me, third from the left, the second row down up there. Okay? So here's the bird king. And then they have a bunch of Garuda type figures, which are basically bird type people. And then you have these other people that are like quasi-demons, they say. Their kind of faces look like, I don't know, some might call them reptilians. Some of them look like they're cow heads. Some of them look like they're cat heads. So like these half human-like and half animal-like. So this whole place tells the stories of this. So here these demons working is what they're called, cat face, I don't know. And as we walk through, it tells the entire story, which we have a hard time obviously understanding today. But there's somebody that's obviously a head honcho in the middle there. Okay, similarly here, all the way up. And then you'll see, of course, these depictions of them sitting and talking. And there's always a central figure, which is very similar to Buddhism and Hinduism in nature. And then there's the big cheeses in the top. Okay, so this is just the entranceway. And then as we continue on, the entire place, all the way down, is all these historical friezes. It's amazing. And they also depict some wars between gods and demons. So it does look like some kind of history of peoples. And then there's Garuda again, the bird-headed guy there, big dude with a human-like figure on top of him who is bigger than the other human-like figures. So again, there's consistently this reference to these larger individuals that are significantly larger in size. Here's depictions of great battles, and again, you see these human-like individuals, and then you see individuals that are like, I don't know, half something, like half human-like and half animal-like. The demons, I assume, is what they're referred to, and big battles between them, but you also see human-like forms battling each other as well. So it's not like the story depicts humans versus non-human-like. They're all mixed up on two different sides of some issue. So this is obviously a depiction of a great battle. And then again, we see this consistent use of very large human-like people. And then there's other human-like people depicted that are like a quarter or half their size, quarter their size-ish. Very similar to the larger individuals with the apsaras, and the women apsaras were a third of the size. So this entire frieze all the way along here is depicting some battle. So they call it here the war between the devas and the asuras, which is the demons and gods in translation. So it's actually a very similar story to even Western Christianity, the demons and the gods, and there's a war in heaven, or whatever you want to say. And again, see, there's large individuals here, like these guys on these chariots, and then there's other people that are under them or holding them that are like half their size. So, and it's all depicting one scene, so there must be some consideration for accuracy of the size of the individuals. There was big people and there was little people, okay? And see, there's different facial structures, like there's human-like, and then there's the demon-like, or whatever you want to call them, animal-like faces of cows or cats or lizards or whatever. But, and then there's human-like people fighting each other as well. So it's not like it's a racial thing, if that makes any sense at all. This whole place all the way down. I spent 3 days here photographing this entire thing once and studying them. All the way down. This whole wall is just one big war scene throughout history. Amazing. We just went through the 1/8 basically of the structure seems to give the history of these wars. Now we move past the wars and we look into some other form of peaceful era. Is it before or after the wars? I'm not sure. But again, look at the giant. There's these big individuals and then these smaller individuals. It's consistent. There was big guys and little guys. And so again, we have what are kind of depicted as the demons' facial structures or whatever, plus the Garuda, the bird face structure. And then there's human-like structure. And then an aspara, of course. The women are smaller. And they're on different levels. And this is a consistent strategy. It's kind of like the devils or the underworld or whatever you want to call it. And they always show them pushing up from below, supporting the ones above them. So you'll see down below here, it's like a structure under the ground. And often you'll see them holding things and pushing up to hold up the floor or whatever's above them. So we see human-like folks there. And then over here, we have the non-human-like. But they're all living and working together. And then there's the big dudes and the little dudes again. This whole wall is more like some kind of history of working together. Different leaders of different groups. And then here it looks like somebody preparing for war. Right? So there's all these people now lined up ready for war. And then we get into a battle. So now there's a battle. And there's Garuda, the bird king, huge, this guy here, with one of the giants on his back, standing on the shoulders of those below. And it does appear that there's people shooting up at this giant that's on top here from down below on the side. But there's also little people holding up Garuda and the large guy from underneath. So it's not like little people against big people. It's all mixed up. And it seems to depict that quite clearly. And all the way along. So another battle. So we went from battle to peace and then battle again. All the way along again. And we come around a corner, there's another one. Again, it looks like they're preparing for battle here. And then, do they get into the battle? They're all looking this way to my left here. So it seems to me we should be walking that way. It just says the war between Asuras and Lord Krishna and Vishnu's avatar. Or pardon me, Krishna was a Vishnu avatar, they're saying. Really? I don't know. So it's hard to say. I don't know how they would know that. There is no writing. It's all interpretation. Is this the same as in India? And maybe there's writing to explain it in another location, but it's not referenced really. So I don't know. But it seems to me we're walking left because everybody's looking this way, so we should follow the way they're looking, is the way I would read it. And it's more Asiatic. You go from the right to the left, just like, the Chinese read from the right to the left, and whereas English read from the left to the right. So it just seems to me this is going from right to left. Depiction of another battle. All the way down. Now we went from kind of these like half animal, dragon, demon type huge animals to elephants and now horses. See that? So now we're in this next section and it's like now they have horses and elephants. But the horses is new here. So again, I'm going this way because they're looking this way. So that's the way I'm going to follow. And there's another one of these big guys. Is that Hanuman, the Monkey King? I'm not sure. They depict often Hanuman looking like this demon type face, but they also say Hanuman was a monkey and they depict him as kind of a half human, half monkey. So I'm not sure who this guy is. But this seems to be a depiction getting into now the story of the churning of the Sea of Milk, where the demons and the gods allegedly work together. Now, is this later? After the wars? They all get together and they said, okay, let's work together. And so they've got the big chieftain here. Who knows? Some big godlike demon type kind of guy or whatever, but he seems to be a head honcho. And there's a bunch of larger people, and then there's the smaller human-like as well that are smaller. They're half the size. There's consistently a depiction to distinctively show a separation in the size of the individuals. And they're hanging on to this large snake, I believe it's depicted. So I think these are supposed to be the 52 gods. And then the head honcho god, the bigger guy, who's the four-faced. So I think that's Vishnu. And then the gods hanging on to the snake, okay? And there's a few other of these guys, big guys, and then smaller big guys. And then we have the middle, the head honcho, right? Now, the other side, it's like a tug of war, right? So we have another guy, the guy with multiple arms. What's his name?
This?
Vishnu?
This is Brahma.
Well, Brahma in India, but who's the guy with multiple arms in Hinduism?
This is God absolute.
Vishnu, I believe they call him here. So Vishnu's the guy with multiple arms. You'll see him. Now you saw, so the human, like the gods, are on one side. Okay, and then the demons are on the other. So see? So now we have the demons on the other side in kind of this tug of war, but it looks like they're spinning some kind of wheel, and this big chief buddy is standing in the middle of it. So they're allegedly pulling on a snake to turn this wheel, to churn the Sea of Milk. This is the depiction I understood. So then on this side is all the demons. But they're working together. All the way down. See that? So if we're coming this way, it seems it depicts large battles. And then finally, them working together.
This woman.
And lots of Asparas, yes. All the Asparas. Maybe they were fighting over the women. That wouldn't be the first time men did that. So they say this entire section now is a depiction of heaven and hell. There's an underworld, and there's people being tortured at the bottom. There's different levels. There's all kinds of different beings with different types of faces. There's different levels. The underworld where there's carnage going on, and then you move up to the next level and people are more peaceful, chilled, relaxing, hanging out by the lake. And then up top, there's like huge walls and big places, structures that people are at. So it seems to be depicting some kind of class structure of torture up to divinity or something. I don't know. That's what it seems to recollect here. They just call it heaven and hell because that's what it looks like. So now here's an interesting depiction on this heaven and hell depiction, they say. You've got somebody here in the middle, a bigger dude, And then the so-called gods, or somebody, the bigger ones beside him, to my left, to his right. And then he's pointing at these smaller individuals here. And they look to be condemning them. And then this guy's collecting them and then throwing them through the hole down below, where there's guys with swords and bats, and they beat them and chain them and all kinds of weird stuff down below. So it's kind of like judgment or something. Somebody's judging these people and throwing them down below. But they're the smaller individuals going down below, not the bigger ones.
3 tiers of hell.
Is that what the sign says? 3 tiers of hell. And you see they've got these larger figures that are down below. They're grouping together the smaller ones. And the smaller ones don't have human faces. They have, it looks like a cat type face, these humanoids. And then these bigger guys. And you see they're taking them from above and then they're rounding them up. They put some kind of head rack on them and then they towing them around. Some of them, I don't know, it's hard to say. It looks like they're being tortured and killed or something. Huge. Now this place looks a lot more tropical on this wall here. Again, lots of horses. Preparing for battle again. Now they're facing the right and going that way. Again, the larger individuals. And then the smaller ones below. So here's another depiction, but this time everybody's at peace. So they have these same levels, but now there's nobody being tortured. Everybody's happy. You don't have the warring. You don't have this crap going on. It looks like good times. My take on this, and I've studied this a lot, so we're at the end here, by the way, is it does seem, based on this whole establishment being built on the cycle of the equinox, and was it every 23,000 years, there's a change in the equinox because of the zodiac, we'll call it. But the Eastern zodiac does have the different animals. So the depiction of like dragons in one spot, then elephants, then horses, and then bulls. It seems to be following the equinox series of the Eastern zodiac for telling the story in time. That's the best I get out of it without looking more at it.